Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marston, and today we're taking a look at Numbers chapter 27. The next generation is here, and the time for Israel to take the promised land is close. But before that happens, Moses is going to need to find a successor. Don't forget that because of Moses' own failures, he's not going to be able to enter into Canaan. And so this ends up raising a whole bunch of questions about the nature of inheritances, both of physical resources and of ministries and leadership positions. What makes someone a candidate God will use? How does he select successors? And how can we as humans, whether we're involved in making that decision or not, make that transfer of power as smooth and seamless as possible? If we have answers to these questions, it will be to the benefit of everyone. Then the daughters of Zelophehad, the son of Hepher, the son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, the families of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, came near. And these are the names of his daughters: Mahlah, Noah, and Hoglah, and Milcah, and Tisra. They stood before Moses and before Eleazar the priest, and before the leaders and all the congregation at the doorway of the tent of meeting, saying, "Our father died in the wilderness. Yet he was not among the company of those who gathered themselves together against the Lord in the company of Korah, but he died in his own sin, and he had no sons. Why should the name of our father be withdrawn from among his family, because he had no son? Give us a possession among our father's brothers." So Moses brought their case before the Lord. At the outset of this chapter, we get a small story that serves to set up more laws about inheritance procedures. Sounds boring, right? But this story actually has some really cool insights. So we hear about this guy named Zelophehad, who was among the last generation in Israel. And we got a brief mention of him and his daughters in last chapter's census. Zelophehad perished, just like the rest of his generation, because he didn't trust God that they could take the promised land in Numbers 13 and 14. And so God said that it was the next generation that would inherit Canaan. They would get all of the lands and all of the houses that their parents were supposed to get. But that creates some problems in a culture that's patriarchal by default. The expectation always was that each person's land would pass down to their oldest son. Of course, we've seen intentional twists on that formula, specifically through the book of Genesis. For example, Abraham's possessions went to Isaac, his second-born son. And Isaac's possessions went to Jacob, his second-born son. But what about a person who didn't have any sons, like Zelophehad? He's got 5 daughters, but are they just supposed to let their father's land be inherited by one of their male cousins? A cousin who presumably would be inheriting a parcel of land of his own? And by the way, this isn't only in the interest of Zelophehad's daughters. It's in the interest of carrying on Zelophehad's lineage. If his land, his inheritance, is joined to that of this family of cousins, then what does that mean for Zelophehad's grandchildren or his great-grandchildren? We also shouldn't forget Leviticus 25 in the midst of this, how all of the land is ultimately God's possession, and he is giving it as a permanent gift to each one of these families. It will be a permanent gift through the Jubilee, where everything will reset after 50 years. Debts will be paid, slaves will be freed, and land will revert back to its original families. And so really what we can see here is that there's a gap between the written words of God's law and God's Eden ideal that he's trying to restore to all creation. That is, men and women together, reflecting his image, walking with him, trusting him, and ruling in partnership with him. So how are Moses and Zelophehad's daughters going to bridge this gap? They humbly, yet boldly, approach God, asking this question about how to interpret his commands. The same thing we should all do whenever we have questions about his word. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "The daughters of Zelophehad are right in their statements. You shall surely give them a hereditary possession among their father's brothers, and you shall transfer the inheritance of their father to them. Further, you shall speak to the sons of Israel, saying, If a man dies and has no son, then you shall transfer his inheritance to his daughter. If he has no daughter, then you shall give his inheritance to his brothers. And if he has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to his father's brothers. If his father has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to his nearest relative in his own family, and he shall possess it. and it shall be a statutory ordinance to the sons of Israel, just as the Lord commanded Moses. God says that Zelophehad's daughters, they're in the right. They should be able to inherit land on behalf of their father's family. And the fact that they're female shouldn't disqualify them from carrying on the family's lineage. And so all of this sets up the official laws given on inheritance. Possessions and lands will pass to sons first, and then to daughters, and only after that will it pass to brothers and uncles and cousins. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go up to this mountain of Abarim, and see the land which I have given to the sons of Israel. When you have seen it, you too will be gathered to your people, as Aaron your brother was. For in the wilderness of Zin, during the strife of the congregation, you rebelled against my command to treat me as holy before their eyes at the water. These are the waters of Meribah of Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin." After the inheritance instructions, God tells Moses to climb a mountain and survey the promised land for the last time, after which Moses, like his brother Aaron, will die because of the transgression he committed against the Lord. As good and as righteous as Moses was, he wasn't perfect. He still made mistakes, and that means that it won't be under his watch that all of creation is redeemed to its creator. Moses looks over the land of Canaan bittersweetly. His goal was to get the people there, and he's failed. But he's gotten them so close. Whoever is next up to lead the people, they are not going to have far to go at all. And that's precisely because of every time Moses was faithful and every time he was obedient. That should be the end goal for our lives too. Then Moses spoke to the Lord, saying, "May the Lord, the God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the congregation, who will go out and come in before them, and who will lead them out and bring them in, so that the congregation of the Lord will not be like sheep which have no shepherd." Now remember in Numbers 20, when Aaron died, God commissioned Eleazar, his son, to take his place. And that was so that the people could continue to have someone who would make sacrifices on their behalf. But all of this raises the question, who is God going to appoint to replace Moses as the leader, the shepherd of the people? Who's going to speak on behalf of God? Who's going to mediate during their disagreements? Who's going to intercede and pray on their behalf? Moses begs God to appoint a successor, one who will have the wherewithal to gently, yet firmly, lead this congregation into the promised land, just as a shepherd leads his sheep in and out of the sheep pen. And just like how God provided Eleazar, God is going to provide again. So the Lord said to Moses, "Take Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him, and have him stand before Eleazar the priest, and before all the congregation, and commission him in their sight. You shall put some of your authority on him, in order that all the congregation of the sons of Israel may obey him. Moreover, he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire for him by the judgment of the Urim before the Lord. At his command they shall go out, and at his command they shall come in, both he and the sons of Israel with him, even all the congregation." God calls Joshua, Moses' young assistant, to be Moses' successor. We remember that this is the same Joshua who has experience leading the armies of Israel. It's the same one who was with Moses on Mount Sinai. We've heard how he worshipped God at the tabernacle day and night, and he was one of the only 2 faithful spies to trust God's word. Now he's tasked with leading all of Israel into that same land that he spied out. Joshua has quite the resume, but it's nothing inherent in him that makes him qualified to accomplish this huge task. God says that he's filled Joshua with his Spirit, just as he had filled Moses with his Spirit, and the elders from Numbers 11. And then God instructs Moses to bring all of Israel together to celebrate this changing of the guard. If the people see Moses handing over his authority, ordaining and commissioning Joshua to be his successor, then they're going to be that much more apt to follow Joshua in the future. Moses did just as the Lord commanded him, and he took Joshua and set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation. Then he laid his hands on him and commissioned him, just as the Lord had spoken through Moses. Moses and Eleazar are careful to do everything that God had said. And it speaks to the importance of commissioning and ordaining ceremonies that we might have in our own contexts. Of course, that could be in a religious capacity, like introducing a new pastor, but it could also be in the secular realm, like promoting a new manager. Anytime there's a transfer of power, there are bound to be hiccups. But what's important is that the Moseses, the leaders, feel comfortable giving up power, that they find a suitable candidate that they can trust to lead in their place. It's also important for the Joshuas, the new kids, to know that they have a mentor who believes in them, and that gives them the confidence to lead without hesitation. And ultimately, it's just as important for all of the people to know that the Joshuas have the Moses' blessings. It lets them know that they're being left in the hands of a chosen successor, not someone random. And so this chapter is all about inheritance, both of physical resources and of leadership positions. We can't delude ourselves into thinking we're going to be around forever. We need to make sure we have plans and strategies to pass on our ministries to the next generation when that time comes. Sometimes that even means that it's going to fall to unlikely candidates, like the daughters of Zelophehad. But at the end of the day, if everything we're doing is for the glory of God, then it's His work, and He can have anyone He sees fit accomplish it. In the long run, over generations of time, God will accomplish His purposes. The question is, are we going to help that process along or hinder it? Thanks for watching 1189. I hope that you have a good day, and God bless.